Hello, everyone. Welcome to twitch.tv/the Onyx Path. My name is Travis. My pronouns are he and they. And when I am not running games or streams, I am writing games. Excuse me. But today I get the wonderful opportunity to combine both of those things as we are going to be working on some community content for the Storypath Nexus. In case you're unfamiliar with it, the Storypath Nexus is a community content program hosted through Drive Through RPG. And effectively, what it does is it allows you to create uh, supplements for the Storypath system using some of the various IPs that Onyx Path has released. I've thrown an informational link in the chat there for it. Um, Among the settings that are available on Nexus are Trinity Continuum. Uh, Currently, it's Core, which includes Assassins, and Aberrant, and other settings will be unlocked as they release to the public. Um, right now, today's episode, we're focusing on an ongoing uh, production we're working on for Anne called Assault on Nemesis Station. We'll get into the core premise a little bit and then get into some design work. But before we do, I also want to take an opportunity to remind everyone that we are currently raising funds over on Kickstarter for Titans Rising and Titanomachy. The idea is to not only help bring Titans Rising, which is a new book for Scion, together and out into your friendly local game stores, but also to revisit Titanomachy, a previously released collection of antagonists for Scion. And previously, it's only been available in POD. We're also funding getting that in traditional print and onto game store shelves with this Kickstarter. So it's one Kickstarter. You can back it to get both books. There's a lot of cool stuff going on over there, and I believe we've already unlocked a couple stretch goals. So if you've not yet done so, please head over there and check that out. Tell your friends and spread the word. Um, so yeah, let's dive into some design stuff. I'm basically just going to be kind of talking through some ideas. I'm happy to engage. If you have any questions in the chat, feel free to fire away. Happy to engage with those. If you're here and you just want to write along, you can certainly do that as well. If you have something you're working on, bring up your word processor and listen in the background and get cracking away at it. So, last time when we were working on this, we had completed our principal antagonist design. Most of the antagonists that we have, uh, or all the antagonists that we have designed so far, are aberrants or aberrant cultists. The basic premise that we're exploring here is that the events are going to be taking place at Nemesis Station, so named because it is on the asteroid belt object known as Nemesis. The players will arrive. We're working a little bit. We've got the plot points sort of bullet pointed out. Players will arrive and discover that the station has already undergone some serious attacks and damage, and the investigation thereof will lead them to the conclusion that there are aberrants present. So we've statted out some sub-aberrant mutants, a leader of that cult who is an advanced mutant, um, which we made a little bit of tweaking to the sort of sub-aberrant mutant templates that are included in Aeon Core. And then we have, of course, a Divergent, Nemesis, and Terrat stat block, all different sort of strata of power levels for these antagonists. Uh, because I want to really ratchet up the horror element, we've tuned these, I would say, so that these stat blocks are kind of at the upper end of the archetype for each one. So the pools are a little bit higher. We've gone with sort of maximum in values such as the number of qualities they have and the number of mutations we have. And we've also added a couple of new features that are introduced in this book, including the luminous quality, which is based similar. If you're familiar with Aberrant, it's similar to the bioluminescence body modification. It basically allows them to uh, emit light. And then we have an energy absorption mutation, which allows them to uh, absorb the damage from a certain source of action and regain points of corruption uh, through that power. And I'm just spotting a typo. So um, we have the basic motivations for that Terrat level threat bulleted out, but we're definitely going to put some more meat on those bones. However, before we get too far into fleshing everything out, I want to make sure that we have all of our skeletal structures in place. And that means tackling our non-antagonistic NPCs, or SGCs as they're called in Storypath. They're the non-player characters, the ones who are controlled by the story guide and who are effectively there to either serve as uh, assistance for the characters or um, possibly imperiled people for the characters to save. You can kind of go a couple of different routes with them. Um, Basically, anyone that the characters might interact with could conceivably be covered in here. Now, you don't necessarily need to stat out everyone that the characters are going to interact with. And I think in some situations, it's perfectly fine to build, in most situations, I would say, it's perfectly fine to build like one stat block that's going to represent all the members of a group. So if you have police in your game, whether it's one cop or 20 cops, they're going to use the same. All of them will use the same stat block. The variation between story guide characters doesn't necessarily need to be so great that they need individual sheets. They're not player characters after all. So yeah, today I would like to make sure we have a good wealth of those together. We may not even use all of them that I'm looking at statting out. In fact, because we had gone to um, Trinity Continuum mission statements as kind of our excuse me, as our touchstone for this um, for the adventure. We've set up the Nemesis Station is run by the International Consortium of Eco Mining, also known as ICE, and they're profiled. It's a meta corporation that's profiled in Trinity Continuum mission statements. And I'll go ahead and bring that link up, throw it in the chat just in case anybody needs it. So, and mission statements is a collection of various factions, not only the UN and the AN Trinity, but also various meta corporations. Excuse me. Um, Technologies and systems for including these organizations as antagonists in your game. So if you're standing against an entire corporation as opposed to an individual or some individuals within it, these rules are here for you. Um, Excuse me. All right, so diving back into it. Um, I don't know what's going on in my throat today. I apologize. I would like to make sure that we have reasonable story guide character stats for any ICE personnel they might run across. So the first step in doing that is I'm going to go ahead and double check here in mission statements to see if we have any pre-generated story guide characters that are part of ICE. It's looking like we don't in the core write-up. many of the people who work for ICE are going to be baselines, though they will of course involve some scions as they can afford to on a freelance basis. Um, so let's look and see the kind of personnel we're going to need. You'll notice I've mentioned in previous streams I tend to select cool art and work off of that. So we've already got a medic here, and I'm assuming that the medic is going to be at least one medic that is a Vitakinetic freelancer. You're going to want somebody who's got that kind of power if you're looking at a long-term, uh, asteroid mining colony. So we're going to just call them the psionic medic. And then we should also probably have a plain medic. And I will probably dance those two around so that they're in alphabetical order when we're done. But for now, I think they'll be fine where they're at. So just looking over into our opponents and allies section in the AI core book, they have some various preordained or predetermined stat blocks. So I think we're going to build our mundane medic off of the technician. And let me just bring up here our Trinity Continuum core rules as well, because these are considered minor characters. So we're going to hop into the core rules for creating our antagonists. And remember, if at any point, if you are stuck on something, or if you're looking for, a way to approach the system, if you're trying to find an answer in it, a lot of these things are covered in the Trinity Continuum core rulebook. Don't be afraid to refer back to that at any time for guidance and help in getting your design together, whether you're designing something for community content or even just as a story guide. I think sometimes it can be a little easy to get wrapped up in the minutia of what's going on in Aeon specifically and forget that you have that robust tool set in the core book. So definitely always be sure to pop back over there and look at things. So the medical technician is effectively a minor character. So we're going to give them kind of the basic breakdown for a minor threat, but we're not going to give them any source or any anomaly powers. So they're just going to have their primary, secondary, and desperation pools, their enhancement, defense, health, and edges. We also, because they're antagonists, we don't really need to concern ourselves with some of what I would call, I guess, lifestyle edges. We don't need to worry about their wealth. Their wealth is what the story requires it to be. We don't have to micromanage that for them. So really looking for scene impacting things. And I think that's an important thing to sort of linger on for a moment as we're discussing antagonist design in Storypath. The design is really focused toward utility and toward giving you what you need for those antagonists to fulfill the role you envision for them in the story. You don't necessarily need to build them as broadly and as fleshed out as your player characters. You certainly can take time to flesh out an antagonist. You can have villains who you sort of hang a lantern on as being like the central point where you have a much more enriched and in-depth backstory. But honestly, it would be, I think, labor prohibitive and time prohibitive to try to work up intense backstories for all of your SGCs. I know some people have talked about like techniques they use where it's like, you get 5 questions and you answer those 5 questions so that way you have that at a glance as kind of a profile of the SGC. That's cool. That's one way to tackle it. Um, I think for the purposes of our story of Assault on Nemesis Station, we're really going to just kind of dial in on what their role is, both in the corporate structure uh, and in the story, um, and just kind of push everything through that lens. Excuse me, forgive me. It's been a long week. Um, so, uh, our base medic is going to have just our base stats, whereas our psychic medic is going to be a little bit beefier. So let's do our base medic first, so that we have um, kind of some idea, and then we can build up from there to encapsulate what the psionic medic would have. So again, just hopping back here to take a look at presentation in AN to keep everything nice and consistent. All right, so we got and again, that's another thing that I guess I kind of want to touch base on, is you can always reach back and kind of refer back to previously published materials as a layout guideline. It's a little bit more challenging with some of the earlier games in the lines because some formatting things had not quite shaken out to the point that um, they are in the later books. So some of the formatting might be a little inconsistent. But in that case, if you look at the later books, you should usually see kind of what directions things went. So, because the medic is mundane, we don't need to worry about gifts or source or psi modes or anything along those lines. We just have our primary, secondary, and desperation pool, our health, defense, and any edges they might have. Looking back at the chart in Trinity Continuum Core, minor threat is rated normally at 642. I see no reason to change that. So let's give them 642. For the medic's primary pool, I think obviously we'll say medicine. How about emergency response? And you want to make sure that each of the primary and the secondary pool for your antagonists have a quality or two assigned to them, and these are sort of the type of roles that they would make using that pool. It can be easy to fall into the trap, and I know I have done so in the past, of just giving it like one word or even naming it after like an actual skill in the system. I would encourage you not to do that. I would encourage you to look more at the umbrella category of what type of action you're trying to convey, and see if there's a broader um, way of applying that, or I guess I should say a broader word to apply. We could say first aid, we could say triage, things along those lines. But if we take that, zoom out a little bit on that, I think emergency response works well because that also then will cover, if they're driving the ambulance, that's an emergency response, right? So that would be a role that one might not normally associate with their ability to perform medicine, but it is associated with their ability as a character, if that makes sense. And once again, feel free to just straight up, you know, cook up things on your own, and examine that as in the context that you think is going to best serve your story. I would caution against going too broadly with these terms, because it can start to feel like um, like everything counts as the primary pool. It starts to lose meaning if you get too broad. But I think with a little practice, you can find that sort of happy medium. So we have emergency response as their primary pool. I'd like to always give them two per pool. So what else might a medic be good at aside from emergency response? I would think maybe I would say maybe um, like de-escalation, right? The medics are trained to calm people down, to keep people cool, to get people to cooperate. So I think de-escalation might be a good catch-all term for that, and that's something they can employ outside of the context of their work as well. The social skills they would have developed from that. So that's what we're going to go with for our primary pool. As far as secondary pool for a medic goes, um, we could go. Let's go with vehicle maintenance. Um, that way that they can sort of make sure that their vehicle that they use in the course of their emergency response is up to date. It's working. Um, Keep everything running and repair it if need be, kind of in the field to a limited degree. What else do we want to give them? I do think that they should probably have some athletics effectively, right? So we'll say um, how do we want to phrase this? It's going to be because it's going to be about carrying people, about navigating dangerous terrain, about sort of the physical fitness that comes along with that. Um, so maybe we could say why don't we say movement and obstacles, right? Because this gives them a focus on not only getting from place to place, but also overcoming those obstacles that might be in the field. If they're rushing into a lunar settlement where one section is depressurized, boxes have been thrown all over the place. It's a general navigational hazard. The medic needs to be able to move around between those spaces. So I think those are going to be our pool breakdowns. We've got edges here because they are. Let's see. Just looking to see what I've got here for my overset text problem. That's all right. I'll get to that later. I just every once in a while something will pop up in the pre-flight, and I want to make sure I note what it is, so that I'm aware of any mistakes that I'm currently making or any vestigial problems that might come back and haunt me when I go to finalize the layout. But in terms of edges, one of the things we'll look to, we know that from the description and mission statements, we know ICE tends to provide genetic modification for the employees, particularly things that aid with long-term survival in low-gravity environments. So I think we can safely grab some low gravity adaptation edge. And I think we will take that at 1 dot. And that basically means that the character suffers no problem from living in low or zero gravity environments for months or years at a time. The character also suffers no negative modifiers for maneuvering in low or zero gravity. So that sounds probably about kind of like what we want. So we're going to throw in the low grav adaptation. Now, once again, okay, so we've got, I feel like I need to reiterate, I do a lot of my work directly in InDesign when I'm working on community content, just because it does help me spot like formatting issues and things along those lines. Unfortunately, it does make the spell check a little bit less reliable, but I often find that reading the writings out loud helps compensate for that. So we've got our low gravity adaptation. According to the core rules, they have a total of 4 edge dots. So let's see what else we can kind of slide their way. Just looking through some of the edges that are offered in Trinity Continuum core. I'm thinking maybe small unit tactics might actually apply. I know it maybe sounds a little strange, but um, I think that is one way that they might, if you're out there in groups working, search and rescue or emergency response, there's definitely some coordination that's going to be happening out in the field, and small unit tactics could help with that. So let's maybe keep one eye toward that. And a lot of it is also, is this going to come into play when the party is interacting with the antagonists, right, or with the story guide characters? Even if they have something that might be a capability that makes sense, it might make more sense to spend points in the places where you know it's going to be an issue. I think again, I'm just sort of scrolling through our edge options here. Kind of see what we've got. I think maybe let's just give them a little bit of hardy. We got 3 edge points to spend, so let's give them 2. Let's go 1 dot in hardy and 1 dot in tough cookie, and the 2 dot version of tough, 2 dot edge tough cookie. Ooh, I am sorry, I'm having a hard time finding my words today. Yeah, tough cookie is just a 2 dot edge, so we'll add that at 2. And also right now I'm using numerals for all of these, but I will go through and correct those to dots before we get too far into it. So come on. Okay, and then our template at this level prescribes defense and health of 3. So we're going to go ahead and ratchet those up to the suggested amounts. And then, of course, now that we've got that basic set of traits assembled, we're going to go through and do the math that we need to add to anything. So knowing from edges, your hardy has an effect, but does not directly affect the number of injury conditions. It more is like a effect during die rolls, so it wouldn't affect the general trait breakdown of the story guide character. Whereas Tough Cookie, the character can take whatever they dish out, and often does. They always have a soft armor rating of at least 1, even when not wearing armor, and may add this armor rating to the value of any armor they wear. So, because antagonists use a Gestalt defense score, basically, it is both their sort of natural defense and any soft armor they wear. We'll just add that bonus directly to the medic's defense. So that's all handled. Now we're going to want to look at any equipment that they might have, any enhancement that they might gain from that equipment. So rather than giving like a big long equipment list, we just look at the template itself for the antagonist. And we find that they're set to have 0 enhancement. That's generally fine. In the case like this, where we've got a story guide character that has a very specific set of skills, that's also very specifically oriented with its primary action, I think that maybe it's okay to add in an enhancement of 1, and then give this little parenthetical qualifier for it. So we'll type that in as medical equipment and call it a day. So yeah, so that way they have a little bit going on, a little bit of enhancement, specifically when working with trying to treat injuries or heal patients. Otherwise, they don't carry any basic enhancement. So that's going to be our core medic. We're going to copy that one over here just to keep things nice and alphabetical. I'm going to move. Juggle this around a bit. Again, as I said, part of the reason I like working in InDesign for this stuff is so that I can adjust my layouts on the fly as I'm in the middle of making decisions. I work in a somewhat chaotic fashion, and the way that I'm approaching the work here for this stream is less so. So normally I'm even more kind of chaotic and bizarre in the way I tackle things. And I find that being able to rearrange the layout on the fly helps me cope, I guess, with that. So yeah, that's where we're little behind the scenes as to why we do things the way we do them here. All right, so we have our base medic down. We've sorted out our traits. Now we have our psionic medic. Now our psionic medic, we're going to go into some higher level, I think, power levels. I think maybe we bump them up to the medium threat sort of area. We're going to treat them as like a freelance Vitakinetic who has been contracted by ICE. So bringing them up to being in line with the medium threat template. We're giving them 753 in their pools. We're going to give them an enhancement of 1 that goes across the board. So we don't need a qualifier on it. They will have defense of 3 and health of 4, which is kind of the opposite of where our previous was. And we are going to just make a note that Tough Cookie is not on here for the moment. I think we'll leave Hardy. I think we'll leave Low Gravity Adaptation. Those both seem like the kind of things that would be handy for them to have. However, at the medium threat level, they have 5 dots and edges, 3 source, and 3 anomaly powers. So I'm going to plug those in as well. So we'll note that we have 3 more dots to spend here. We have our source is going to be psi. And checking against that, that's psi 3. So we're going to look over in our Trinity Continuum book and see what that grants us when you have 3 dots of psi. Looks like they have 10 psi points. So we go psi 3. And psi points, and we have enhancement, and then we're going to add their modes. And they effectively have 3. Now, one thing to consider when you're creating antagonists, in some cases, their powers or various traits that are available to the type of antagonist that you're portraying may have some system impact. That system impact, whether or not you incorporate that into your stat block, is kind of at your discretion. I would recommend, if those consequences are going to have a mechanical impact that would affect their interaction within the game, that you should include them in the stat block. And then if they are more flavor oriented or just don't impact the mechanics in a way that is likely to influence the player character versus story guide character interaction, I would say you can probably leave those out or save them for flavor text rather than having to lock into system things that aren't going to have an impact at the table. To that end, the reason I bring all that up and I'm discussing all that is because there is a phenomenon in Aeon known as, let's see, what is it? It's a psionic dysfunction. Effectively, what happens is if you take too much focus on a single mode within your aptitudes, it can start to affect you personality-wise. So given that we want to kind of avoid any sort of immediate negativity in the at least in this psionic medic, we're going to stay away from the psionic dysfunction. We're going to make sure we distribute our modes in a fashion that does not cause that to trigger. So that means obviously we're going to be dealing with vitakinesis because this is supposed to be a healer. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to want them to have some healing abilities and such. Excuse me, I'm opening a fine natural carbonated water. That is better. All right. So maybe I think we'll go with iatrosis of 2 and agendus of 1. Iatrosis is kind of about healing. You can, with the first out of iatrosis, you can ease discomfort, soothe symptoms of physical and mental trauma. With the second dot, you can use accelerate, which basically you are bolstering your patient's ability to heal. You're not like flat out psychically healing them, but you're kind of ramping up their initial internal ability to heal. So we'll note down the iatrosis 2. And then we're also going to give them the agendus of 1. The agendus of 1 is reinforce. This lets you boost the patient's physiology so they're more resistant to sources of harm. It doesn't heal existing damage or eliminate toxins or illnesses that are present, but it makes it less likely that they will take further damage. So that can be a handy thing to, if you're running into a triage situation, you drop, where there's active sources of harm still present, maybe like a battlefield situation or something like that. You could drop reinforce on your targets there, and give them a little bit of a bump to keep them from getting worse until you're able to evacuate them. Just as an example of what you can do with reinforce. So we'll add that in. All right. So now we have kind of our breakdown of our 2 kind of medical personnel that we would find there at Nemesis Station. I would also like to kind of break down some of our basic ICE employees. Before I get into that, I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate or 2 of this. I'm going to do 2 duplicates. And so that way we've got ample space. And then I'm going to effectively, let's see. Bear with me just a moment. Yep, okay. So now we can get a little bit into sort of the core employee base at ICE. What kind of people are going to be working for this, effectively ICE mining company? Particularly the types that they might interact with the player characters throughout the course of this adventure. So you have people who do the actual mining for ICE, and then you have people who are like hauling the payloads around. They're hauling the fruits of this mining labor around the solar system for fun and profit. So I think we're probably going to want to have like miners, and we're going to probably want to have some sort of a pilot. And I would think that these are all going to kind of fall within that base miner character template. So we're going to say we got the medic. We're going to go with a miner or mine worker. Copy this over so we're dealing with the right stuff, as it were. And then we're going to have our actually we'll call the pilot a freighter pilot. Forgive me for shorting out there for a second. I'm just making sure I'm keeping everything in alphabetical order so I don't get confused any more than I naturally normally already am. Okay, so we're looking at adding in a freighter pilot and a mine worker, and we're probably going to want, let's go with site manager. That's going to be important. And then what else might we want? We have our medics covered, basic labor and transportation. Who else would be of interest that the party might interact with? Just going to dig through the ice book. If anyone watching does have anything they want to shout out in terms of like corporate structure, what might be fun to see, that would be cool. Happy to entertain any ideas. I think maybe, who would probably be important, which would be security. So let's move the site manager down a little bit. And we'll put security forces. And another reason why we're doing this, right? I'd mentioned earlier that I tend to be a little bit chaotic and bounce around. Like normally, if I was designing a module like this, not for this purpose, not for the purpose of sort of public discussion and doing it on camera, I might bounce back and forth between the actual story beats and the antagonists so that I'm only designing exactly what I have to design. And I do recommend doing that whenever possible. Part of the reason why I'm kind of fleshing out some of these uh, archetypes that you might find um, at one of the ICE facilities is because there is no list of ICE NPCs in mission statements. So this makes for an easy reference point. Even if you're not actually playing the adventure itself, it's got some sort of external utility. Because if you're doing anything where you're involving the Eco Mining Consortium, ICE, you'll have easy to reference traits that you can draw from. So, having said that, though, I think I'm going to keep everybody roughly at the same power structure. So it's really going to be a matter of going in and personalizing their edges and personalizing their pool names. But before I forget, I absolutely distracted myself. We have 3 dots we did not spend for that psionic medics edges. So I think in order to make them as effective as we can for the purposes of using their psionics, we're going to go ahead and give them the favored mode, which is a 2-dot edge. Scions can take it, and they require at least 1 dot in the mode that they're taking it in. This grants the character exceptional skill with one particular mode of Scion powers. Character gains 2 enhancement when using this mode. This can be spent to overcome difficulty, purchase elements of the power as normal, or spent to increase one aspect of the power governed by psi or mode dots at 1 step per enhancement. so you can sort of pump it up a little bit beyond kind of the basic capabilities. It can only be taken once and may apply to uh, a mode of their aptitude or auxiliary modes. Our story guide character does not have auxiliary modes. That's much more a player character thing, or at least a more powerful Scion thing. But it's good to be aware of, good reference to have for the future. So we're gonna go favored mode, and we're gonna go, excuse me, Iatrosis, because at the end of the day, they're there to heal people, right? So that's what we're gonna make sure they're good at doing. And that still leaves us with one more dot, because favored mode is 2. Going back over into our Trinity book, we have enhanced attunement is an option, but I think we're going to skip that. I don't think we're going to go that direction. It lets you use your psi powers, and it lets you attune at a greater range. So certain basic things you can detect. I don't think that's going to be pertinent for the needs of this story guide character. They may well have it, but it's not going to be system impacting for us. So we're going to go ahead and just breeze past that. We've got the enhancement already in. Let's see. I'm just kind of looking through some other things. Oh, you know what else works? There's a social edge in Aeon called dual citizenship. This allows, basically, you can claim citizenship in multiple nations, each of which has their own benefit. Dual citizenship makes traveling between those nations easier. Also lets you sort of, maybe lean on some relations if you need to. If you are in a foreign land and one of the nations you have citizenship with has particularly adept diplomats in their embassies, that can be a boon. But the reason I bring all that up is because it's established in the lore, in mission statements, that ICE tends to create micronations where they set up their mining interests. So it's quite possible that Nemesis itself is one of these micronations, an area that has its own sovereignty, is able to engage in sort of diplomatic relations on its own behalf, and has the protections that a sovereign nation would under the UN. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and add dual citizenship to our psionic medic. And then favorite mod. Excellent. So sorry about the backtrack there, but now we've got that ironed out. So going back through, we've got the freighter pilot, the mine worker, the security forces, and the site manager to sort out. So let's just take these in order. Our freighter pilot, we would like to swap out their primary pool. I think it's going to be space travel. And we'll say probably bureaucracy, right? Like if you're hauling around a bunch of materials and you're going to different ports, you're going to different places, you have to know there's a lot of paperwork involved with a job like that. I know it's not particularly sexy or exciting, but if you talk to a truck driver, you realize that there's actually quite a bit of paperwork and red tape and bureaucracy you have to deal with your weigh-ins, with keeping your logbook, things along those lines. Um, so I'm going to give space travel and bureaucracy as the primary pools. Our secondary pools for the freighter pilot, I think we should have probably um, maybe fast talk, something along those lines, like a bluffing sort of specialty almost. So they can, not only talk their way past, um, customs agents or other obstacles that way, but also relating to like predilection for maybe games of chance if they're, stopped at a port or something along those lines. So let's go with bluffing. And then let's keep the vehicle maintenance. That's obviously a good thing for a freighter pilot to have. We're going to keep the primary, secondary, and desperation pools at the same trait level. As far as edges go, I'd like to keep the low gravity adaptation. Though let's kick that one up, I think, to 2. And we'll keep the tough cookie at 2. And that will bring us, with low gravity adaptation of 2, they effectively have their feet are modified to have hand-like structure, so they have thumbs on their feet, basically giving them 4 arms with which they can achieve their tasks. So that's, I would assume a freighter pilot. My reasoning for this is that I would assume a freighter pilot is going to spend more time in space outside of a settlement than most. So having that second dot of low gravity adaptation seems to me like thematically would fit. The tough cookie, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. It's a nice extra little bonus. And then for the freighter pilot, we're not going to have any special equipment for them. They'll have their ship, but the ship isn't the kind of thing that applies enhancement to rolls in and of itself. So we're going to just set their base enhancement at 0. That brings us over to, so we got the freighter pilot, the medic, our mine worker, our typical ice miner. Thank you. So I think we're gonna go with and keep the low gravity adaptation at 1. Maybe we keep the hardy at 1. We lose the tough cookie, and I think in place of tough cookie, we should give them weak spots, which I believe is a 1-point edge from core. And what that does is basically it allows them to catch a flaw early before something or someone gets hurt. You have eye for weaknesses in materials or can spot errors in blueprints and calculations. Once per milestone, she may re-roll a failed attempt or ignore a simple complication. I think that would be beneficial. I think that's the type of skill that you would cultivate working in an ice mine where anything could go wrong at any given moment and you could be in some real serious problem. Sorry, my cat is typing on the other keyboard. So yeah, hardy 1, low gravity adaptation 1, weak spots 1. I think I'm going to also add always prepared at 1. And my reasoning for that is, again, environmental. Okay, if you're working on a mine that's out on a asteroid that has no inherent individual atmosphere, it's not. Excuse me. Long night. I apologize. It's not safe. It's not a secure environment. So I think having always prepared as an edge would suit that. That's something you're kind of used to, um, being able to respond. Actually, now that I'm thinking on it, now that I've said it out loud, and I'm looking at the two, danger sense might be more appropriate. Um, okay. So danger sense for recognizing threats, always prepared, is unaffected by losing the ambush roll. I think, you know what? As I think on it, I think we're gonna go with danger sense instead. Um, so let me make that correction there. And we're going to leave the enhancement of one intact, but we're going to change it to mining equipment. And of course, because we removed the tough cookie, we are also reducing the defense back to where it belongs at 3. Okay. So now we've got our mine worker, trader pilot, psionic medic, and medic handled. And drop in and take a look at our security forces. Let's ramp the security forces up a bit as well. We're not going to give them any source or any anomaly powers or anything along those lines because that seems a little bit of a stretch for what ICE is likely to invest in. But I think we can give them otherwise a medium threat stat block without pushing things too far into the realm of disbelief. So let's kick these traits up. We got the 753 in our pools. We're going to be dealing with a total of 5 edges. Enhancement's going to be 1, and it's going to be across the board. And excuse me. Health 4, defense 3. Glorious. All right. So, kinds of things that a security officer in a asteroid-based water mining facility, what sort of security measures would they have? They would probably have, or I guess, what sort of security measures would they be well versed in? I would say there's probably going to be subduing intruders, or just subdual. Let's go with physical subdual. So they're good at subduing people, but not necessarily like fighting to kill. Is not covered under that. This is specifically subdual, and then we'll go with ICE security procedures. Right, the company is going to have its list of things that have to be checked off. Paperwork that has to be done. Ways of determining who does not have access to an area. I think the security forces would probably be well versed in that. That would probably be a primary pool kind of thing. Also comes into play with like if the characters are trying to sneak past or bluff their way past the security forces, their security procedures gives them kind of something to roll against. So I think that's a good pick for the primary pool. For our secondary pool for security forces, I think maybe we should have again, a de-escalation, but it's going to be a little bit lower for the security forces. They do possess the ability to talk people down, but it's less, I guess, of a priority perhaps for them than it is for, you know, uh, an emergency responder who's trying to get you to calm down so you don't, pull IVs loose and toss yourself in cardiac arrest, for example. Um, so yeah, the de-escalation is a factor. What else would security be good at? What else might they need to know? Uh, Maybe we'll put international law, right? Maybe not even international law, but international. Um, so I think they want to know like how international law might supersede local law or how they might intersect with one another. Um, they're certainly not lawyers, but they do have a working knowledge of how that would happen. So perhaps um, international law enforcement powers. So instead of knowing our, or I guess, juris, let's go with jurisdiction instead. So that's not, it's confusing to the reader, perhaps. One of the things that can trip you up, I think, a little bit easier than you might realize, is just using the word power. It's one of those words that can have multiple meanings, and oftentimes in a role playing game, it carries a context or connotation of like an actual in character ability. So I try not to use it as much as I can avoid it unless I'm actually talking about a power. Um, and again, sorry if that's a little bit too far into the weeds, but that's the insight that you're here for, right? Okay. Just double checking to make sure that I had done all my math right on these previous templates, and I didn't forget to spend anything, which seems like the case. So, getting into security force edges, they're going to have low gravity adaptation because everybody that works for ICE, I think, is going to have that. That seems pretty straightforward to me. I think they will have small unit tactics, which is a 2, because that sounds a lot more likely. So we have 2 edges left. If I get rid of that hardy, I'm going to go take a look and see what we've got for our options here. Once again, returning to the well and wealth of information that is our core book. I think maybe we give these guards a little bit of iron will. I like resisting the trope of the guards just being sort of like dumb and incompetent. And iron will is a good way to offset that, because this allows them to resist fear, torture, interrogation, mind altering drugs, and even inspired mind control or influence. So, like, even a telepath is going to have a bit of a harder time sort of pushing past the resistance of these folks. So, I think we're going to dump the remaining 2 edge points for the security forces into iron will. I like it. It makes them a little more robust and a little bit more of a challenge for players who might be facing them, and makes them maybe a little bit more, uh, yeah, a little bit more of a speed bump to overcome. A little bit outside of the sort of normal tropes, um, which I recommend breaking with wherever possible. By the way, if you have an opportunity to sort of, oops, if you have an opportunity to sort of turn a trope on its ear or play against type, do so. That's what makes it fun. Which is not to say that it's also not fun to include some um, even cliche things that are expected. Um, one of the things that is enjoyable at the table is the familiarity, the sort of uh, endorphin pop of recognizing something from a beloved piece of media. Having said that, though, a lot of it comes down to execution. You want to avoid being cheesy with what you're doing. You want to avoid, or at least being too cheesy. I like a little cheesy personally. Um, but you want to make sure that you're not just entirely going in one direction or the other. Switching it up, having everything be an inversion of existing tropes, for example, is just as, or could be just as boring as having everything be an existing trope. So you want to mix, match, season to taste, things along those lines. All right, so getting into our site manager, I think we're gonna kick our site manager up to a medium threat. And let's go a little bit further afield here. Let's assume that our um, site manager is actually going to be a talent. Why? Because the best of the best are talents, and those I would assume are the type of people that ICE is going to be pursuing and recruiting for these site management positions. So why not? Let's throw a talent in there. It's a fun little thing. My suggestion would be if you are incorporating talents as antagonists, particularly in Aeon, but really anywhere across the board, keeping in mind that paradigm that talents are the best. They rise to the top. So people probably aren't going to have talent mooks. You're not going to have like a little talent, minor threat. 10 of them guarding your villain's hideout. That's not how they're going to be distributed. They're going to be top tier opposition, possibly even the main antagonist, though not always. So our site manager, we're going 753. We're going full medium threat template. So they're going to have 5 dots and edges, 3 source, and 3 anomaly powers. So let me just double check where we're putting our source. Yeah, that's right. And we will replace modes with gifts. Now they will have 3 gifts to choose from, or 3, I guess, anomaly powers, one might say. So we're going to do inspiration as their source at 3, and instead of points, you take the inspiration anomaly power per the core rules for creating antagonists. You gain inspired as the power. You have an inspiration rating equal to the desperation pool and can gain talent gifts as additional anomaly powers. So just want to double check. Our desperation pool is 3. Our inspiration pool is 3. Perfect. We're going to go ahead and zoom. I'm going to break down the facets just in case we need them, but also it'll help with determining the gifts that we're going to use. So I think for a site manager, we're going to go with reflective and intuitive. I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of destructive. Well, yeah, I don't think they have a whole lot of destructive. That's probably not the way they're going to approach things. So we'll say reflective 2 and intuitive 1. Okay. And now let's hunt for some gifts. What sort of gifts are we going to give this site manager? I think they should be probably more aimed toward um, efficiency, bureaucracy, uh, commanding underlings, things along those lines. So we've got 3 of them. We have our facets figured out, so we can cover and address any prerequisites. Um, and I just want to pop in and look at our aptitude gifts first. I realize this might be kind of working backwards a little bit, but I want to make sure that we're specifically looking at things where we might have like a command uh, opportunity, for example, the types of things that somebody who's going to be in charge of a facility might lean into. Um, and once again, that might be player facing, might wind up being something the players are going to brush into. Um, okay, let's see. Um, Chess Master is cool, but I don't think that that's quite the vibe we're going for. Um, let's see. Curses is nice, but okay, actually, curses is kind of cool. That might be neat for a for a site manager, for a coordinator. It would give them sort of the idea to of the what the gift does is it gives you kind of like a rendezvous point you can establish um, at the cost of an inspiration. I'm going to keep that in mind, but we'll see if there's other things that are a little bit more broadly applicable to uh, someone who's in like a corporate uh, leadership position, if that makes sense. And so, right, as I said, right now I'm just kind of going through the command edges to see what we or command gifts to see what we have. I'm certainly open to checking some other things out. Um, let's see. I do like the idea of public education, the idea that they can sort of grant their pool to another. Can only be used once a scene. I don't know necessarily that. Again, this is a thing where it might bounce off. Where is that going to come into use when facing down the protagonists? Um, and I don't have anything in specific mind. Um, however, um, rousing speech could be cool. It works off the destructive facet. So maybe we rework the assets a bit. We go 1 of each. I think that might work. Then that way we've got destructive covered and it's not a complete waste of energy and effort. So we're going to grab that rousing speech gift. The way the rousing speech gift works is basically you impart strength and courage to your friends. In this case, probably going to be more employees, and get them on their feet again when things look their darkest. Spend an inspiration to add your character's destructive facet as enhancement to the team's common pool in a teamwork roll, or add half that as an enhancement to a single action for each character in part of the scene. So that could come in very handy. Um, just as an example, let's say that the characters are making their way into a ice facility with the intention of capturing and interrogating the site manager. The site manager could use rousing speech to grant enhancements to the security forces who are protecting him, making them a little bit more of a threat to the player characters. So, I like rousing speech. That's going in for sure, and we're gonna put in a page number. Bear with me momentarily. 209. All right, and that leaves us with 2 more gifts to select from. Theater of Conflict. Like that, this would be cool if we were going to be in a more, excuse me, more talent centric environment. Because it basically you spend inspiration to make it harder for other people to dramatically edit. But I don't necessarily know that that's going to be important here. Disposable minion is also nice. If you're going to be taken out, you can spend an inspiration to have someone under your command take the hit for you. It's cool. I don't think it's quite right flavor wise. Um, this looks like it would be super handy. The right climate. Um, it's a culture gift, and you can spend inspiration to learn the attitudes of all parties present and what actions will sway them, giving you a +2 enhancement to any social actions that utilize this information for the rest of the scene. That looks like something that would be very useful for a boss type to have. So let's go ahead and type that in, the right climate. And that is in Trinity Continuum Core. And that's going to be page 210. All right, we got one more gift to find for our site manager. And again, these are what I'm kind of looking for right now in this pass, as we're looking at the gifts, is ways that the site manager can act as like a buffer, a support character to their own support characters. Make them make the people under their command have a little bit more oomph. I think that's where they would want to focus their energy. So let's see. Kind of like I know that feel is a possibility. It gives you enhancement to change the atmosphere to whatever emotion she is personally feeling at the moment. So if they're calm, they can change the atmosphere from intimidated to calm. Things along those lines. Again, I think we keep it in the back pocket and we keep scrolling for the moment. I think, let's see. Again, I'm just kind of sifting through these things. Let's see. I think I got you. I think actually, let's do reverse engineering calamity. Um, the talent will spend an inspiration and spend time observing an object or place. They gain an accurate impression of what happened in the scene to cause damage and a vital and associated clue. may not know who is involved, but it has a pretty good idea of basic features such as the height and weight of the people involved. So that comes in very handy, I think, for a supervisor in determining, like when something goes wrong on that station in this remote, um, mining colony, the ability to sort of assess that and be like, oh, this is where things broke. It seems like that would be a handy thing to have. So let's go with reverse engineering calamity. Just bear with me a moment while I hunt and peck and dig and figure out where things go. So that's 214. And again, just trying to make sure that wherever possible, I am referring folks back to the core book or the Aeon book, keeping me from having to rephrase or reproduce the meaning of text that's already in play. Lets me streamline and just focus on what I actually need to add it to the adventure. And also, it serves the sort of general community content purpose of introducing new people to these worlds. As they check out this, they will then you have to assume that your product is the first or among the first that someone is coming across for that line. So you have to kind of, it can take a little work, especially I think as you grow more familiar with the setting and more familiar with the mechanics. Um, you have to try to keep in mind like your audience does not share your system mastery. Um, so referring them to those places where the rules that you're introducing or discussing are detailed, I think saves them some headaches and hopefully helps them uh, refine their system mastery as they're looking at options and um, game rules within the context of play, if they're referring out to those, generally speaking. Okay, so now we're at 5 edges. We've got, what about, let's see here, about 30 minutes left in our broadcast time. Before we press on onto these edges, I do want to remind everybody once again that the Titans Rising is currently on Kickstarter. This Kickstarter is supporting Titans Rising, which is a new supplement for Scion Second Edition, but also supporting Titanomachy, which was previously released only in print on demand and PDF. This Kickstarter is designed to bring both of those books to your friendly local game store, um, and if you back it on Kickstarter, to your personal bookshelf. So head over to the Kickstarter, take a look at that. Lots of cool stuff going on. Also, we will be celebrating the Kickstarter with an actual play. It's going to be running on Fridays. So just check the pre-roll after the stream today to get an idea of that, or look at our schedule on the schedule tab of this very channel. All right. So getting back into our edge selections. We've kind of, I think, married ourselves to the idea that all of the ice personnel are going to be low gravity adapted. I think for the site manager, we should go with some dual citizenship. That's handy to have. And again, seems like something that's more more for the, I guess, affluent, right? It's a luxury item. It's something that has a cost associated with it. It's one of the many ways to denote the haves from the have-nots in the setting. You know, people have access to better things. They can get things like dual citizenship. So we got dual citizenship, low gravity adaptation, both covered. That leaves us with 3 edge points left because I'm not married to Tough Cookie yet. So um, let's see what we're looking at here. Going back into the core for edges. Just scrolling through. Forgive me if I'm silent for a moment while I do that. Just trying to make sure we've got our bases covered. So nothing's really leaping out at me in these basic edges. I'm once again going to pop over to Trinity Continuum Core, see if we've got any new edges there that make sense. We've got the dual citizenship we've already grabbed. Psionic edges are not going to apply to this character. Let's see if there's some other augmentation edges. Let's assume this is kind of neat, I think. Let's do a computer enhancement at 2 dots for our site manager. So, um, so that'll eat up 2 dots, leaving us with 1 left. And computer enhancement is interesting in Trinity. It basically grants you 2 enhancements to all your technology roles related to computers, as well as 1 enhancement to pilot roles for vehicles where your character is using the computer to control the vehicle. Basically, you have a mini comp that is cybernetically interfaced with you. You get a couple edges from this device. In addition to the basic enhancements when you're using computer stuff. But I think this is the type of enhancement that maybe somebody might have when they're dealing with, controlling remote, sizable, complicated mining facility, right? A little bit of extra chrome in the dome might help make that a little easier. And so that leaves us with 1 more edge dot. Let's just give him Swift. Let's just say when the need arises, the site manager can haul ass should they need to. All right. Now we need to go in and tweak out those dice pools. I think the site manager's primary pool, we're going to have, we'll say, do you want to call it command structure? Do you want to call it, their ability to sort of coordinate the activities of their employees? So I guess let's look at employee management as a primary pool. And then let's look at bureaucracy as a primary pool. It's something that we've kind of covered in here a couple of times. I'm almost positive that's spelled wrong. My apologies. So they're good with red tape. They're good at making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Our secondary pools, let's do Hmm. Maybe we'll do computer operation. And that also then ties us into that computer enhancement they have, right? Now they have a pool that can really focus on. Um, because we're assuming that implant device the site managers have is going to permit OpNet um, connections and let them sort of remotely access files and things along those lines. So I think that's a good place for a secondary pool to go. And then maybe we'll put, how about corporate intrigue, right? So having this in the secondary pool means that the site manager has some familiarity with the means by which companies get into one another's business or even internally seek out types of sabotage. Um, Not necessarily direct sabotage or blatant sabotage, but even like headhunting, trying to recruit people out from under the corp, things like that. This is the type of thing that I would think the site manager would be trained to keep at least one eye open for, gripping their pillow tight. So that brings us to completion on our antagonist traits. Oh, let me switch that around because their enhancement is general, so they don't have that. But we can type in +3. And we can just pop in the bonus that they get from their computer enhancement. So technology and computer. All right. So we have our enhancements sorted out for the site manager. That brings us to completion on all of our uh, ICE personnel stat wise. So these are the people that are going to have been on Nemesis when the attack occurred. They may not all show up in the story. They may not all survive, but we can make a note in their description or perhaps in a sidebar. We'll have to see how it goes as we're putting the flesh on the skeleton of this story to see where exactly that information will be. But we can point out if there are characters that are not necessarily featured in the action that they're there for completionist sake to give you a series of SGCs to draw on for your own stories involving ice. So I just want to go back through our original bullet points and ensure that we're not missing anything from the antagonist pool. One pitfall that you can get into, especially as you're developing a more complicated story or developing a story over time with a lot of downtime in between writing sessions. That's something that I know I struggle with, and I'm doing full time content creation. So I can only imagine as you deal with, you know, part time content creation, other full time responsibilities, you know, maybe having longer gaps in between your uh, writing sessions, it can be a problem. So that's why I wanted to get the bullets on the page a couple sessions back. So now we can go back through and look at them and see what makes sense because we don't want to wind up creating three antagonists in the back of this book that aren't necessarily going to be used in the adventure and then missing an antagonist who's like called out by name somewhere in the adventure, right? So we kind of go back and scrape through what we've got so far. We have ICE employees are mentioned. Space pirates are mentioned as a potential um, player option, and I think maybe if I'm not mistaken, whereas ICE does not have any particular detailed treatment for employees in the book, I believe the pirates, excuse me, the space pirates do. They're known as the Hounds of the Void, and yes, we have our threats there. So I can make a note um, right here. That if the story guide wants to include space pirates, they would need to go to mission statements for those stats. So we're not reprinting them here. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. While I'm all for variant stat blocks, I don't really see a need for them for this project, particularly as this project is one where people are going to possibly not even interact with space pirates. And those who do interact with space pirates are most likely going to be playing them as the protagonists. So we point the audience to where they need to go if they want to flesh out that decision. That's up to them. Scene 2, we have the investigation. We have the rubble, the aftermath of the aberrant attack. Doesn't look like there's anything specifically antagonist related in here. Now we might pepper in some survivors in scene 2 at some point. So yeah, let's make a couple of bullet points here as we're just sort of dealing with it. So we're gonna say there's gonna be a computer challenge to retrieve data. And we will make a point here to possible survivors. So now we have a call out in our bullet points of at least some of those SGCs where we're going to see them actually show up in the game. And again, this is why I do advocate for using this sort of bullet point driven method, where because as you're fleshing out the things that make the engine go on your story, you're fleshing out story guide characters. You're fleshing out these options that the players are going to have before them. You can then go in and work those things into your forgive me work these things into your story. Make sure you're not missing any beats. Make sure everything is covered. I'm just trying to get this connected down here with it and have it still behave itself. Looks like it doesn't necessarily want to, but that's okay. We can just make it behave. And once again, as I adjust things here, part of the reason why I'm working in InDesign, part of the reason why I'm going about it the way I'm going about it, is so that I can check the amount of space and such that each section is coming up with. I was running out of room on the page above, so I went ahead and connected it to this page. No harm, no foul, and also gives me now an opportunity to lengthen out these bullet points a little bit more. And then again, once you've kind of bulleted everything out, that's when you go in and really start hanging the meat on those skeletal plot hooks you've been working your way through. So here, scene 3, we have the Players following the trail to the aberrant nest, overcoming natural and aberrant made obstacles and pitfalls. And upon arrival, they must contend with the aberrant security force. So we've got that handled right there. We will note probably a couple things. A couple things we need to know about that scene. We're going to want to know for sure, because we mentioned the divergent aberrants are the security force. We're going to mention for sure that no other aberrants are going to interfere in this scene, regardless of the outcome. If the player characters manage to take down the divergence and walk right through them and move along, they get to do that. That's fine. The other aberrants are not going to become involved at this point. The Terrat really doesn't really have it in them to be bothered yet. It's not important enough to register as a threat yet, so they're not going to get involved. And the Nemesis level aberrant, I think, we'll wait and see what folks are doing. Possibly trying to see if they can glean a tactical advantage before directly involving themselves. So we have no other aberrants interfering in scene 3. We don't have any. Okay, and we have possible survivors listed here. So that's where we get again into. Oh no, I'm sorry, I had that listed in the previous one, and I just copied it over. Clearly, somebody needs a nap. But we could also have more possible survivors, right? Perhaps. Perhaps one or two of the hostages are here. I've written it down with question marks because I'm not sure I want to work them in there yet. I think maybe scene 3 should focus more on just being physical challenges and not get bogged down a whole lot with secondary goals. But I'm not 100% married to that idea, so I've got it listed, but sort of question marked off. As we get into scene 4, this is where we meet the cult, so we know that we're going to need a couple things, right? We're going to need our cultists. Come on, behave yourself. So we're going to need our cultists and cult leader. This is definitely a place for survivors. We'll absolutely be here. And let's go ahead and toss the divergent aberrant in here as well. And we're going to say, or not the divergent, I apologize, the nemesis aberrant. And let's double check their powers. If I'm not mistaken, that nemesis pretty buff, pretty large. So we're gonna let them sort of be the visible power that the party engages with. We'll have them refer to themselves as like the mouthpiece of the sovereign. Might change that name because that's a name that Kelly Clark used in our Trinity Continuum Aberrant actual play, where we were playing members of Nova Vigilance, which is a superhero organization. But I don't necessarily know I want to keep that name because that might connect this adventure to that character in people's minds. Having said that, there's no reason why someone who's a superhero in 2028 couldn't have devolved into a aberrant tyrant by the 2120s, but alas, we'll save that for later. And then, of course, I'll make that decision as I get into fleshing it out. I guess I should say. Um, so now at this point, we have all of our scenes have their bullet points. All of our antagonists have their stat blocks. We're now getting into descriptions and the fleshing out of text. Again, we're breaking this down into 5 scenes, so it's going to go pretty quickly. But my aim is to probably try to get through some of it off screen between now and next week. That's going to be a bit of a tall order. I do have a lot going on this week. But I'd like to get some of it done. And so that next week we can sit down and kind of go over what was done rather than you watching me do it, because that could probably be pretty boring, I would imagine. But having said that, if I don't get around to it, then we'll just be doing some straight up writing on stream next week. Not the apocalypse in either case. We are drawing to the end here. So before we disappear, I want to thank you all, whether you're watching live or in Memorex, for being here and hanging out. And I want to just one final time remind you to head over to Kickstarter. And it would help if I spelled it right. And check out Titans Rising and Titanomachy over on Kickstarter. 2 great books brought to your shelves and to the shelves of friendly local game stores through this Kickstarter. The next time I will be online tonight, I'll be over at the Pinnacle Entertainment channel, talking about a project that I have for my company, Aegis Studios. I'll be over there at 7 p.m. Eastern, so hopefully we'll see some of you over there. Then I will be returning to the channel here. No, I won't be returning to the channel here. I'll be returning to my channel, Plastic Age Plays, which is listed in the header here. If you've not yet done so, head over there and follow me. I'll be returning over there for an actual play tomorrow at, I want to say around 1 or 2 Eastern. You'll have to check the schedule. It escapes me at the moment. But yeah, other than that, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Recommend that you check out the Titans Rising Kickstarter. Recommend that you check out the Storypath Nexus. Get yourself some some stuff up there. If you have game notes that you want to incorporate and get out there for public sale, do it. Your own NPCs that you've made up, or maybe a location that you've detailed. It's perfect fodder for the Nexus. And also, I'm going to throw a link to our Discord in the chat. We have a channel in the Discord that is dedicated to the Storypath Nexus. So if you have questions about it, you can hop in there and talk it over. Also, we have channels for our other community content programs. Canis Minor, which deals with Realms of Pugmire, and Slarian Vault, which is our Scarlands community content program. So if you hop in there, look for those channels. If you have questions, or you're looking for somebody to collaborate with, or you just want a basic idea of what's out there on these platforms, head over to the Discord, join those channels, and should be in good shape. But I suppose that's about it for me. My name is Travis. My pronouns are he and they. When I'm not running games, I am writing them. You can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet at Travis Legge. I've recently joined Blue Sky. I will probably be sunsetting my Twitter sometime in the next month. But you can, as right now, I would recommend you head over, find me on social media. I have a lot cooking at the moment, so I would love your follows and your input. And once again, I'm very grateful that you stopped by today to check out what we were doing. I will be back here for this show as well next week, hopefully with a little bit more developed of manuscript, but if not, we'll just be doing some quiet ride-alongs. Maybe I'll prepare some music or something for that. We'll see how it goes. Till then, take care of yourselves and each other. Make sure you're getting shots, wearing masks, everything that you need to do to stay happy and healthy, and to be here next week so that we can hang out, because I want you to be here. I would be sad if you couldn't make it back. So take care of yourself. See you later.